Welcome to the newest episode of Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and today we have another fantastic guest for this week's new episode, Evan Porter, who's been a longtime runner of T-Wolves Insider. I mean, I swear, I was in 8th grade when I started following his account, and our worlds kind of aligned. We went to school together, and now we're just in the Wolves community together. So, Evan, how's it going, my guy?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Evan and I, we both went to Arizona State, Walter Cronkite School. Can't tell you how many times we crossed over by the school shuttle and we're yelling something Timberwolves. Probably the only two people in the entire school yelling anything about the Timberwolves. So, yeah, man, we've gone through it. But just going into the summer, is there anything new, anything exciting? What's going on with you?
Not too much, man. I'm just working my full-time job, coaching basketball, and getting ready here for summer league. So nothing too much, just staying busy on my end.
No, I love it, man. Yeah, we're all getting ready for Summer League. Thank you, everybody, first of all, just for the support in the beginning of Wilder Wolves. The support this first month, this first few weeks has been absolutely incredible. And we're just excited. If you can, it would mean the absolute world to me if you can subscribe and just continue helping build this community of Wilder Wolves. This is something that I think could be an incredible community. And I'm just so appreciative once again for the start of this show and the support immediately. And let's transition right away because you mentioned Summer League, Evan, and the Timberwolves. We had the two rookies we just drafted, and now we're moving straight to Summer League. We're going to start a series today. Just each of us are going to list 3 things that we're excited for this Summer League. Evan will start, and then I'll go, and we'll go back and forth until each 3 things are mentioned. So, Evan, what is the first thing you're excited for in Summer League?
Yeah. Well, coming off the draft, I think the Wolves took 2 players that I particularly didn't really get to watch a lot of pre-draft, kind of going the younger raw prospect route. So I'd say my first one would be, how does Beringer and Rocco look in the first kind of games played for the Timberwolves?
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I had a very similar first mention. I just want to see how the 2 7-footers feed off each other because
Yeah.
we saw, I think it was, were you surprised when they drafted Beringer at 17 and then second round they moved back and they took Rocco Zikarsky, who not only is another big man, but he's now the 3rd tallest player in the NBA.
Yeah, there was a little bit of shock on my end. I know Beringer was more of a mid to late first round projection, but I think the Rocco one was a little bit more surprising. You had the guys like Walter Clayton Jr. on the board. I know a lot of talk about Sorber, who went right before us, and there's some bigger college name guys who could kind of come in and probably fit more right away. So definitely interesting to see how the Wolves are kind of balancing the salary cap and in the second apron with these moves too, kind of continue to trade back and getting Rocco on a 2-way deal, so they didn't have to use another roster spot. So that's kind of the route that Tim seemed like he wanted to go, and keeping some spots open and staying under that second apron is something that I think they want to do. So.
Yeah, it's definitely, there seemed to be some politics there early second round, right? It was pick 31, and then he mentioned Tim Connolly. There was like 20 already kind of predetermined contracts, agreements between players and teams. So moving back, getting Zikarsky, and yeah, like I said, I have a very similar interest with those two because Zikarsky, I mean, even though they're both kind of running bigs, and I've mentioned it multiple times, just Rudy Gobert kind of in his sensei stage of his career, just kind of mentoring these really talented young rim protectors because Zikarsky was also a projected top 10 pick. And I'm just really excited to see how those two, can they play together, number one? Can they play together? What does Zikarsky and Beringer spacing look like on offense? Because Zikarsky, with the way he's not a shooter, I would say, but he shows some good signs at the combine that he might develop that skill. Just when you've watched Rocco Zikarsky, what has been your first takeaway just by evaluating him?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of the Wolves reporters were in person were like, "Oh wow, this guy can actually dunk standing, literally just standing up." So I mean, the size for an 18-year-old is something that's just crazy to me. Obviously, I think his ability to have like a touch and be able to shoot the ball is something that I am curious to see, like you mentioned, because if he can develop a jumper, I mean, that kind of turns into a situation where like, okay, he's 7'3", he's 18. Can he shoot the basketball too? Obviously, he's a very raw prospect. Don't really know kind of his agility yet too much, how kind of quick he can move. But I mean, this is a guy who's got tremendous length. And you talk about Rudy Gobert being a mentor. I mean, if Rudy Gobert is able to teach him up defensively and he can be kind of a nice pick and roll, but also be able to be a pick and pop kind of big, it sounds really intriguing a couple years down the line if there is something out of it. And then Beringer too. I mean, he's very young too, and he's a freak athlete. He's very more mobile than a guy like Gobert. So on that end too, is he's a lot quicker, a lot more agile. Looks like he has pretty good hands too, and that's something that Rudy Gobert struggles with is his agility in hands. So can Beringer be a defensive guy like Gobert, but also be more of a threat, catching the ball and using his hands more, using his athleticism more. So yeah, it's something to kind of really tackle and look into because I know a lot of guys were fans of some other players. Like I was a huge fan of Clayton Jr. coming out of the draft. I thought we needed another point guard, so I was huge on him. Obviously, I was huge on Sorber because I thought he was a really pro-ready big. And he got picked by OKC sadly, and then Clayton goes pick after us. So it was just an unexpected route, I think, for a lot of Timberwolves fans and the staff as well, all the reporters, and it was kind of shocked. But it should be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Berger's so interesting because when I started watching him late in the draft process, and I mean, the athletic tools are ridiculous. This might sound like a hot take, but outside of Wemby in the last 3 or 4 drafts, I'm not sure I've seen a more just freakishly athletic big man in the draft. Is there anybody who comes to mind for you on maybe a better athlete than Beringer in the last couple years outside of Wemby? Because I'm struggling.
I was watching some of his clips earlier this week, and just like his ability to just really jump and his length is quite impressive. I mean, I saw the free throw line dunk that they were recording at I think his workout or something, and yeah, the athleticism is there. I mean, he's 6'11", 7 feet, 19,
Yeah.
20 years old. I mean, I know there's like that Giannis kind of build, like, and it could be similar to that. Yeah, I mean, it's athleticism wise, I'm not 100 too sure. He's probably the most athletic player in the draft, and that's what I know Tim Connelly mentioned why they liked him so much. So I mean, yeah, there's not many names you could really put up there. So it's kind of special and exciting to hopefully he can become something. And I know summer leagues this week starting up, so I'm sure fans are kind of excited to see how he plays.
Rob Dillingham was talking about him the other day,
Yep.
and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but Rob Dillingham, when asked about Beringer, he goes, "Yeah, he cold. Like, yeah, Beringer's
Yeah.
solid. I like him."
Yeah. I saw that today. I saw it today. Yep.
What was your first thought when you saw that? Because I'm starting to I'm starting to drool over the idea of like a Rob Dillingham Beringer alley-oop.
Yeah, I'm excited to see those two in the summer league, and that's a big thing too. Is I think the Wolves will have another fun summer league team. They usually have in the recent years, but I mean, you look at their team now, and they've got Dillingham, Clark, Shannon, Leonard Miller, and now you add Beringer and Rock out of the mix too. So I mean, it should be some fun summer hoops, and I think if Rob's already saying that about Beringer, it should be exciting to see. Hopefully, he got some good lobs, and Rob's quickness should set that up. So.
No, absolutely. And, we've kind of touched in on the two big men. It's going to be really interesting just seeing how they play off each other, how they fit with Rob Dillingham. Zikarsky, the fact that he was projected top 10 pick early in the year, and then he kind of had injuries, didn't really fit into his role, falls second round. It's going to be very interesting to see if those if not, I mean, if you can get both, that'd be pretty cool. But just how those two play off each other. But what was the next thing? Because we kind of had the same number one,
Yeah.
role number one. What's the
Yeah.
next thing you're excited about for the Timberwolves Summer League?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Rob's probably my next one. I know he's played in the summer league before, but just seeing like what he's kind of worked on this summer so far and seeing that development. I know we didn't really get to see a lot of him later in the year, heading up to the playoffs. So it's been kind of a while since the Wolves have seen Rob Dillingham in action. So just kind of curious to see how he looks coming out. I know the press were talking about how, his ability to lead a team. Can he be a plus defender? So I'm really curious to see kind of how aggressive he is defensively and how he can kind of lead a team offensively, especially just because Mike Conley's 38 going into the year, and the Wolves haven't signed a point guard yet. I know we'll probably touch on that later, but it seems like the staff really has a lot of trust in Rob Dillingham coming into this year. And if he's going to have that bigger role for the Wolves, how can he kind of lead that team? And can he be consistent? Can he be a consistent scorer? Can he be a consistent playmaker and not turn the ball over? And so there's a lot of things that I'm excited to kind of watch Rob and see how he looks there.
You mentioned one thing that I think should be a big boost of confidence for Rob Dillingham this summer, because draft, they take two big men, lob threat big men. Not only are he a good mentor for those two big men, but also two lob threats for Rob Dillingham. That seems pretty catered to him. And then you also go in free agency, and look, things could change. We'll talk about some rumors later in this episode, but they haven't signed a standout point guard at this point in time, and they haven't seemed overly aggressive, and just, they've getting signs of confidence to Rob Dillingham. So I think if Wolves fans can take away one thing thus far this offseason, I think it is Minnesota is showing a lot of confidence to Rob Dillingham.
Yeah, I agree. And I tweeted the other day too. I mean, you look at the board at 17, and you see guys like Kasparis from Illinois, who kind of was projected top 12-ish range early on in that week, and he fell. And then you look at Walter Clayton Jr., and he was right there too. So you look at two guys that the Wolves could have been like, hey, let's go get another point guard that we could play with Rob now that Conley's going to be old and possibly retiring soon. And they passed on both of them. So I think that's also a big thing that shows a lot of confidence in Dillingham.
Exactly. And I mean, Jaco Shionis, for example, he earlier in the year started so well, people were wondering, could he go as high as top 5? Because he was a 6'5" point guard who was shooting the crap out of the ball. He can really pass in the pick and roll. He just has good size, good defensive potential. But then he had the wrist thing, and his shooting fell off the cliff, and the turnovers were really bad. But having a prospect like that at 17 and Clayton at 18, that's enticing. And they took the raw international big who, they love, and I think we're all going to be super excited to watch. But that's a big side of confidence in Rob. And I mean, they've said he gained 12 pounds of muscle potentially, either since coming into the league or in the summer. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I mean, I heard a rumor about it. I'm not sure how true it is, but I mean, if it's true and that's the case, then that's good news, because size is definitely, his struggle right now. So putting some size on would definitely help him a lot as well.
Yep, and that's a good point. I'm not reporting anything right now. It's not necessarily a fact that he gained 12 pounds. We've seen rumors on social media on that. And I mean, one thing I also like about Dillingham, just watching him this offseason, and this could change the moment the lights turn on and you're functioning off of muscle memory, but I thought his shooting in those little clips we saw, his shot base looked more in place. And I think that's a big deal for him, because the consistency of that jumper was pretty off.
Yeah, that clip did show him he wasn't, jumping a lot more than he was before his release. It was kind of more of a smoother transition into his shot. So I'm curious to see if that's something that we'll be seeing here in a few days when they play their first game Thursday. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see that. Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned Dillingham, because my number 2 thing is kind of bundled with Dillingham. Just, I'm very curious to see how the second year players function as primary pieces on this team, because of course Terrence Shannon we're all super excited about, because the guy averaged 34 per 36 in the conference finals, and he had so many great moments as a rookie, and he's going to be 25 in not too long future, so he should start playing soon. But I want to see how quickly can these two just be, shut down. You're too good for summer league. We don't need to see you. Because if it was my dream scenario, Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon both prove their worth in the first 2 games, if not 3 games, and then they don't need to play the rest of the summer league, kind of like what Jabari Smith had a couple years ago, kind of like what Brandon
Mhm.
Miller had. I just want to see those two just play so well. It's like we don't risk it with them, because if they aren't firm rotation players next season, that would be kind of a disappointment for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point there too. Is I think that's something to look out for, especially in summer league when you have a big roster and a lot of guys trying to get opportunity. I think if Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon kind of prove their worth in the first two games, which I don't know if they're going to play all four games before the tournament and everything. So, but if they can have two good games, I think honestly there's a good chance I think that's all they play. Especially because we're talking about two guys who are going to be key rotation pieces. I think this next year. I think obviously with Nikhil gone, it's Terrence Shannon Jr. as that next guy up. You can even add Jalen Clark in the mix too. But I mean, Terrence Shannon, it only took Finch till the OKC series to realize that Terrence Shannon is ready to play. I mean, he was ready to play coming from Illinois. He was 24 years old already. So he should have a big role next year, and same with Dillingham. So I think, I want to see them play one or two games just to kind of have them give some run and just to play basketball, honestly. But I think after that, it's if you don't need to play them, then there's no reason to. But it should
Yeah.
should be give some fans some excitement.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like, it'd be great because, of course, I would say our franchise has done a lot of its winning damage in the summer league, right?
Mhm.
Going undefeated a couple years ago with McDaniels, Noel, and the Nas Reed championship summer league game against Memphis. That's sadly probably one of the 5 best Timberwolves moments of my life. So that'd be great. But like you said, we just want to see signs of how they look together, and
Mhm.
can they be ready to not only contribute, but be 20-minute plus players next year?
Yeah.
Because they really need Dillingham's playmaking flair with that shot making, and they really need Shannon's rim pressure. They were heavily missing both against Oklahoma City in the conference finals. If they just have two more guys who can just, attack and attack and attack off the dribble, I think potentially that series is a little different.
Yeah, that OKC defense definitely gave Minnesota problems. Gave Julius Randle a really big problem, especially after the first two series. He didn't really see a defense like OKC's, and just the ability to pester all 48 minutes, and that was definitely an issue with Minnesota that series, and kind of caused them to really fall off and struggle. Besides that 140 point performance, it was pretty rough in those other games. So.
No, absolutely. And yeah, it's just, I mean, Randall is a great player. Ant's awesome. But when it's those two and 6 all defensive Thunder players just rotating in and out to attack them, they weren't set up for success when Dante and Nikhil and Nas aren't hitting
Mhm.
three. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just really hope those two can provide that on ball pressure. And what's your next and final exciting thing you're looking for in Summer League?
Yeah, I think one more is the Leonard Miller name, um, because there's a lot of like back and forth on if Leonard Miller is ready for a rotational spot with the Wolves,
Mhm.
um, or is he going to be like another Josh Minot situation where he played a lot of summer league, played a lot of garbage time minutes, but Finch never really liked him to be in the rotation, and in there now Minot's gone. So I'm kind of curious to see how Leonard Miller plays, because I do think as a forward, I am attracted to what he brings to the Wolves with his offensive rebounding, his skill set, his length. He could shoot the ball. He could put it on the ground. He's a physical guy. I think there's talks about him maybe getting some minutes this year too. Minnesota does lack backup big depth. I mean, they don't really have a true backup center right now. It's in the past few years, even it's just kind of been a rotation of Cacklebear, Nas, and now Randall, Rudy, Nas, and they haven't really played like another big guy. Um, so I'm curious to see if Leonard Miller could potentially get some run with the Timberwolves this season too. So I think he's probably my third option too, and he's been in the summer league as well before. He's played really well in the summer league. So I'm excited to see if they shut him down as well after a couple games, and kind of focus him on going to work with the core guys. I think that's kind of a big one too, because yeah, I've seen some circulation about Leonard Miller maybe getting some tick this season, depending on what the Wolves here kind of do in free agency. So that's probably my third one for me.
Evan, I wish my list was more unique because that was
Yeah.
my third thing. Just how does
Mhm.
Leonard Miller look? Because
Mhm.
exactly right. Is Leonard Miller ready to be in the rotation? This
Yeah.
is his third year now, and I don't want to look stupid by saying this looking back, but I like to do draft boards every year, and I promise this was before the Timberwolves drafted him. But he was my number 7 prospect in 2023. I
Yeah.
love Leonard Miller because
Mhm.
I mean the way his size, the way he moves, the playmaking potential, the rate he grew out of his senior year of high school to the 1 year with the G League Ignite. I mean, he averaged 16 and 10 in the G League Ignite. I mean, the talent's legit, but it
Yeah.
feels like Finch is a great coach and old school, and
Mhm.
Finch wants Miller to scale his role down. And I'm wondering, do you think like the reason why he hasn't played the last couple of years is the fact that maybe he hasn't been able to fully scale down his really unique skill set in the Timberwolves rotation? Is that possible? Why?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I also just do think I don't think the Wolves like the past few years. I just don't think Finch really like. I think he thought he had like a set in stone rotation, and I think that this past offseason, even like this offseason so far and stuff, is really realized like even this past year, I think they realized like they can lose as good as Nikhil Alexander Walker was for the Wolves. Like they can lose Nikhil Alexander Walker. Like you don't bench Terrence Turner Jr., Rob Dillingham, Jalen Clark, and Leonard Miller. Like at some point, you have to play those guys. Like they're too talented not to try and get NBA minutes in a rotation or try to kind of fit into a team aspect and play with some of these guys. And like you mentioned, I was really high on Leonard Miller too. I was at a bar when he got drafted to the Timberwolves, and I honestly expect him to be gone by then. I was really impressed what he did with the Ignite League, and in his skill set, like 6'10" forward, really, really mobile, can put the ball on the ground. That was a lot. That was one of my biggest things with him is he could put the ball on the floor, and he did that a lot in the G League Ignite, and he's been able to shoot the ball like decently enough to where like he can shoot the basketball. He's in his rebounding. I've seen in the summer league too. He owns the glass
Really
in
good.
summer league,
Yeah.
and I haven't obviously he hasn't played a lot like with Minnesota, but even in the Iowa Wolves, like his stat lines are just night in and night out, pretty crazy. Like he's got 20, 15 games, and he could play make as well. So I think Leonard Miller is someone that I'm very, very honestly, he could be higher up on my list, like of things I'm excited for. Cause I do think there's a possibility that he could be like a good piece for the Timberwolves if they want to start playing their young guys.
Mhm.
Um, I do think your answer question, yes. But I think you gotta get him confident. You gotta play the guy to give any sort of confidence. Um, and I think that he could be ready this year. So
I think if Leonard Miller follows what we hope Terrence Shannon and Dillingham do and is too good a summer league, you shut him down after 2 games, that'll be an amazing sign for him because I don't think he shuts somebody down that you don't plan to play next year. So if they
mm,
do shut him down, I think that would be a great sign. And
yep.
I just I think he's so special as a talent, man. I don't know
Mhm.
how else to describe it. You just that size, that coordination, that change of speed, that touch. I mean, we saw him in the even it's not a huge game, but remember the All-Star game? Like he was by far the best player on that G League All-Star game.
Yeah,
And the third
yep.
overall pick, Reed Shepard, was on that team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everything that you said, I agree with. I think it's like I said, I could go on and on. I mean, I kind of gave my spiel about it, but I mean, I think he's one of those guys after Dillingham and Shannon. I'm like, look, you've got Dillingham, you've got Clark, you've got Shannon, but Nikhil's gone. Your two bench guys are Nas and Dante. It's like you could play Rob, you could play Terrence Shannon, and you could play Leonard Miller. Like look at Oklahoma City. Like they played 11 guys in the rotation. They play a lot of guys. Like they play Jalen Williams. They play Alex Cruz, they play Isaiah Joe, they play Casey, like they play so many guys because they've given them a shot. In Minnesota and Finch, it's like the frustrating thing for me with Finch is that he doesn't give young guys enough look. Like I think a lot of times last year, I really thought like Shen, like, hey, I'm like during a game, I'll be like, okay, this isn't working. Put Terrence Shen in the game. And then they don't put Terrence Shen in the game. And then another week, they give Shannon a couple minutes, and he plays really good for like 5 minutes. But that's all he gets. He gets 5 minutes. And then he goes back to the bench. And it's like, you can't just do that to a player every 10 or 15 games, sub him for 5 minutes. He looks good. I'm like, if he looks good and he's impacted the game, then play him. Like he outscored Gilgeous Alexander in the playoffs one game. Like,
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Like, I think at this point, like, we could talk about the West too and how everyone's gotten better. Like, I think Minnesota is kind of at the point where like you gotta run with your young guys. Like, you've got a good starting lineup, but let the young guys who are young and have all this energy and talent, like, give them a go. Like, look at OKC, for instance. Like, they're so young. Their bench is young. You gotta let it happen. So I hope Finch kind of changes the mindset of how, it seems like the staff really trusts the young guys heading into this next year. So I'm pretty optimistic that, we'll see a lot of them, but yeah, we'll see.
We're going to learn a lot about how Minnesota developed its young players this year for the reasons you mentioned, because I had a similar issue with Finch during the regular season last year. I thought there are some players like, Dante or just a veteran, and I'm just going to put it frankly, they were terrible for a stretch, but they kept playing, they kept getting reps, and then you have a young player like Dillingham or Shannon, and they make a couple mistakes, and then they're out for the rest of the game. And I did feel the just range of like, okay, so feels like at the veterans, like whacked you with a baseball bat, they would still play. But the young players breathe the wrong way, they don't play. That was like what my brain was telling me in the moment. And I'll say this, like, I'm not going to go all in and bash Finch for that just because we saw the veterans figure out in the second half of the year and they make back-to-back conference finals. I truly believe he's the best coach in Timberwolves history now with the last 2 years. But if we come in this year and these young players, they're not developed and their confidence is still shaky, we're going to have to look at the coaching staff and question, were they in the best position to succeed? But if the young players come in and they look developed and ready, we shouldn't question how they went about it last year because they won games last year and they can win games with young players this year where it seems like they're about to get their chance this year. I think we can't really criticize the way they've gone about it because, I mean, to be completely honest, I think Fitch has done a good job, but that's going to be the question for this year.
Yeah, I mean, back-to-back Western Conference Finals. I mean, you can't really give too much credit like to not playing young guys when you have a rotation that's working. But the Wolves a lot of time went with 8 guys. They'd only play Nikhil, Dante, Nas off the bench, and it's like I don't know how I felt about the 8-man rotation. Like, I do think Shannon could have gotten more minutes, like as a 9-man, and even if you wanted to just run 9 guys, like he should have been the guy. But I think like Finch's rotations could have been better last year. He's a great coach. Great. Like, don't get me wrong. He's done a good job, but you can't, like I said, you can't complain about 2 back-to-back West Conference Finals, especially with the past that the Timberwolves have had as a Minnesota fan. So you gotta take it for granted. But again, like this year, how are these guys going to look? I know the Wolves have some good development staff guys working with the main guys. And I know that the young guys can come in and they're ready to go. So I think, this is the year to really kind of look into that. And yeah.
No, totally. And Finchy, I have to apologize in a lot of ways. I am the idiot who tweeted, I thought Michael Malone would be the coach to start this year when they blew that like 25-point lead to Milwaukee in the fourth quarter. I did tweet that after that game. So I will send my apologies for that, but I'm fully with you. Just get the young players out there, see how they look. And if they show up next year, I'm not going to question what they did last year. But if they don't show up this year and they look shaky, I am going to question the process last year. So it's all really contingent on how does Dillingham, how does Shannon, how does Leonard Miller, how does Jalen Clark look? Because I think at least 2 of them have to be in the rotation next year. If 3 of them, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm so excited to see what these young players have. Is there like a world where it's like going back to our first question, Beringer or Zikarsky, they're just way better than we thought, and they have just a bankable skill just right in the rotation right away? Because we could use one more rim protector. So that would be interesting too. It's not 5%.
I think it's really hard to see either of them really playing year one at all. I think Rocco is like a 2 or 3 year plan for the Wolves, especially just being 18 years old, and I think right now he's just too raw of a player to even really like get a chance. He'll probably be in Iowa a lot this year. He's obviously on the 2-way deal, so I'm excited to see. I haven't really watched Rocco at all, like since I watched a couple of his highlights after he drafted him, but before that, I honestly didn't see anything of him. I think Beringer is more of a 1 to 2 year plan. Learn from Rudy. Could we see Beringer like if we need a sub in and we need protection, maybe, but it's just both of those guys are really raw and got a lot to learn before I think they really make a way into an NBA rotation. But that's just kind of like what I get out of drafting those guys. I don't think you draft them to put them in the rotation. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe Beringer surprises a crap ton of people this week, and we're like, okay, maybe this guy learns fast. I mean, he's only been playing basketball for 4 years, so apparently he's a really fast learner. Right. So I guess we'll see. But I think like the draft kind of show that. I think more project kind of big for Minnesota, but
totally, yeah. I'm just speaking off of the Hall of Fame mode fandom, just best case scenario dreaming right now. But I agree.
Yeah.
I think I'd expect you to play down the road. Leonard Miller, though, like clock is coming. It's ticking, man. It's ticking. Leonard Miller's gotta take that step this year. And let's transition away from Summer League now because we'll learn a lot more starting this Thursday, right? This Thursday against the Pelicans. Pretty sure it's the first Summer League game in Vegas. So
I think so. I think it's at like 12:30.
It is. I'll be at that game. It's gonna be super awesome. And let's transition to free agency now because Timberwolves have been quiet. There hasn't been any major moves. We got Randall back. We got Nas back. Reasonable contracts. But we've seen all the moves in the Western Conference right now with what Denver's done, with what Houston's done. As long as OKC has a pulse, they'll be the favorite. So just looking at the Western Conference landscape, Evan, just tell me what you think of how the Timberwolves stand at this point, about a week after free agency started.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you look at, right away you saw Houston and you saw Dallas kind of make a couple of big moves. Houston getting another huge wing in Dorian Finney-Smith. They get KD, and they don't really have to give up too much out like Jalen Green and pick 10. And you look at their team now, and it's pretty loaded up. And then you look at Dallas, and obviously you've got some injury concerns with Kyrie and AD, but you look at, Cooper Flag and, them filling up their team and being able to have quite a bit of depth. I think you kind of look at those two teams and you're like, in Denver getting Cam Johnson, Valanciunas, a couple of more depth players on their team. Yep. It's like, it seems like Minnesota is a middle of the pack team right now in the West. I mean,
you mean like middle of the pack, like playing team, or do you mean
I think obviously, I mean, you'd probably have to pull up, these standings here. I'm trying to think of all the teams off the top of my head, but you look at the West, and obviously OKC's got that one spot. And I think Houston improved from last year, and they were the 2 seed. So you could kind of probably put OKC and Houston up there as the top 2 if you really want to. And after that, I think after that, it's kind of a big race between, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota, and then those like Clippers, Grizzlies, Warriors teams. I still think Minnesota could be like a top 4 to 6 team. But can they be a top 3 team after what what's happened in the West and losing to Kiel and drafting a bunch of raw prospects. Again, that's when you go back to the young guy question: is how good are the young guys going to be for the Wolves? Or are they going to pick up a veteran in free agency like we're about to talk about now?
Yeah.
Because all these other teams have made moves. So what does that window kind of look like? But I think after just kind of seeing the moves that Houston's made and Dallas has made, I think both of those teams got a lot better. I think OKC's, obviously the best team in the West, best team in the league right now. The Clippers just got John Collins today. I don't know how that looks with him and Zubac and that team. I'm not really scared of Golden State or Memphis getting rid of Bane. But I think Houston, OKC, and Dallas, I think are going to be really good. And then I think there's, Minnesota and Denver kind of right there too. So I wouldn't say play-in, but I think, that 4 to 6 range, I think is somewhere that's just like my first thought of this upcoming years is like a 4 to 6. But again, Anthony Edwards is on my team. We've got a good starting lineup. But Mike Conley's really old though. So I'm curious to see kind of how they stagger Mike Conley this year and if they get another point guard here. So we'll kind of see here.
Am I the only one who doesn't think Dallas will be great next year? Because I love Cooper Flag. Kyrie's out the first half of next year at the bare minimum. They're going through the D'Angelo Russell headache experience. And they're like, we'll see how healthy AD is. And is Dallas really that top end? I think Flag is like the second best prospect in the last 10 years, but Flag's also an 18-year-old kid. And Wemby and LeBron, even though they were on worse teams, weren't efficient offensive players yet. So I don't know. I don't think Dallas is going to be much more than a playing team right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good point there. I mean, obviously, you look at the injuries that they have, and Kyrie's going to be out for a while. Is Klay Thompson going to be okay? They have a lot of those older vets. I just think they filled out their team a little bit better, like depth-wise. They've got, obviously, Gafford and Lively. You've got Anthony Davis. You add Cooper Flag to the mix, and then you've got, P.J. Washington, Najee Marshall. They added Max Christie on that team, signed D'Lo. I mean, obviously, I hate D'Lo, but I mean, I've never been a D'Lo fan. I've told the Wolves to trade him for 2 straight years. Everyone thought I was crazy, and then we got a good return, and everyone thought I was like the smartest in the world. So, I mean, I think Dallas did get better, but I see your point. It all depends on if they stay healthy. If they can stay healthy, I think they're a playoff team. But if they can't stay healthy, then I think they could easily drop in the West because it's so competitive. But I mean, we'll just see. The West is weird because I feel like it could just after OKC, I feel like that 2 through 7 is just so interchangeable. It's so competitive. You just never know who's going to get hurt. You never know what's going to happen. So it's really hard to kind of predict that in the summer. So.
Yeah, totally. I think you said it right. Outside of Oklahoma City, until proven otherwise, is the alpha in the conference. They're the king of the West. Not really any debate there. I think Minnesota, the thing that scares me a little bit, as much as I love Rob Dillingham, and I think he has a good year in him next year, I still worry about the point guard depth right now. And I don't want to say I'm just going to be completely honest. I'm not entirely sure how Mike Conley can be in the rotation next year with the way he regressed this year and expect to be at the top level. I mean, Conley's done so much for the team, but with the way he played last year, I'm not sure if we can be optimistic that we're getting that same level from Mike Conley. And then, if I had before I kind of give my ranking, what do you think of just the Conley dynamic on the team right now?
Yeah, I think that's a big topic of the offseason. I think there's a lot of people that are kind of talking about could Conley even take kind of a Joe Ingles role and really just be like a mentor? Obviously, he's still a better player than Joe Ingles right now, and he has his nights. But I think there was a lot of times last season where he did show his regression. There was a really long point where he wasn't shooting the ball well at all. He couldn't hit a floater. He just wasn't Mike Conley anymore. He's obviously not as laterally quick as anymore. He's always been a solid defender, but he's not laterally as quick as he is anymore. He gets blown by quicker, younger players. So again, he's going to be 38 going into the year. And so I think there's a really big discussion around the Wolves on, do you give Rob, if you're ready to give, do I think Rob will start right away? No. But is there that talk? Yes. I mean, it just kind of depends. I know there's been some talk like Conley could start again, but he's only going to play 15 to 20 minutes a night max, maybe even just 15, which I love Mike Conley. Like, here's
You're
my
not
input on it.
complaining that way.
I
You're not
love Mike.
complaining that way.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love Mike Conley. He's probably one of my favorite NBA players ever. I loved him in Memphis. He was always such an underrated player. But at this point in his career, I don't think he's a starting point guard in the NBA anymore. I think that's pretty given. I think he's more of a mentor, kind of plug and play guy now at his point of life. Like, if the Wolves need to play him for 10 to 12 minutes, then sure, I think he can give you a good 10 minutes a game. But other than that, I don't think he should be playing more than 10 to 12 minutes a game this year. And I think there's a real chance that you could go out and start Rob Dillingham. And that's where the talks of the Wolves need to probably get another bridge veteran point guard, because you don't know how Conley's body's going to feel. I know John Krasinski was mentioning he had kind of a nagging, I don't know if it was it might have been like a shooting motion elbow issue that he's been dealing with.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot to look into with him. And that's where you kind of look at the point guard market. Like, could the Wolves bring in a Malcolm Brogdon, who they've liked in the past, who I've reported that, I mean, they've had interest in. I've heard from multiple people that they like Brogdon. He's probably going to be a veteran guy on a veteran contract. Can the Wolves snag him for a veteran deal? And I think a Rob Dillingham Brogdon backcourt works out fine. I think those guys are two guys you can kind of split, and you don't have to give Rob the starting. You could start Rob, but you could also start Brogdon too. It kind of gives you two options in both guys that could kind of play in that mid 20 range a night, and it give you that split 20 range a night. So I think Brogdon's an option there. I know there's been some like, could Lillard come back in April? And I know you wanted to talk about Lillard. I know like Mark Spears is like the Wolves. Lillard could be the guy for them. How does he look? You know, there's a couple other names out there. I know Bradley Beal is not really a point guard, but could he be a veteran option if he gets released? So I think there's still some options if Minnesota wants to sign a veteran player, but you kind of have to look at it too. Like, do they want to sign a veteran that they don't want to play? Because if a veteran wants to come to Minnesota, they probably want to play. But if they can't play, do they really want to sign with Minnesota? If Minnesota decides that, hey, we want to play these young guys, you're probably not going to play that much. So I think there's some factor into there as well. But I mean, ideally, I think Brogdon's a good fit. You know, Lillard, you know, for the fun would be awesome. Obviously, Dame's Dame. We could talk through that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take on Conley. I think it's a big situation to kind of look into.
Mike Conley in the conference finals averaged 4.4 points per game, 21% from the field, 28% from three, and going the entire postseason, 30.2% from the field. And in the regular season, 38% from two. You can't have that if you're serious about contending in the conference finals. And I love that we just smeared like both of our topics into one, because that is the real conversation. Because really briefly, I will say this: if Minnesota's rotation is Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham as your point guards, and it isn't like a bridge guard like a Brogdon or whoever we might mention in a second, Minnesota isn't a top team. They're not ahead of Houston. They're not ahead of Denver. They're not ahead of the Thunder. No. It's just point guard play, ball handlers matter so much in the NBA. We just saw that in the finals, how many point guards OKC and Indiana have. You need to upgrade the point guard position if you want to seriously contend. So let's use this in transition, because let's talk about the Damian Lillard thing first, because I heard Mark Spears mention it, and I saw ESPN had Minnesota top 5 on their best fit. Do you think that is an avenue that there's like kind of like in Dumb and Dumber? Are you saying there's a chance?
I mean, there's always a chance. It's more of like, it's kind of like Katie. Does Lillard want to go to Minnesota? It's kind of like those things, like, because you saw Katie at the deadline was open to coming to Minnesota, but then recently when we were looking to trade for him, he didn't want to come to Minnesota. So there's always like that thing, like, does Dame want to come to Minnesota? Like, would he want to come to Minnesota? compared to like, oh, I could just take the easy route, go to an LA team, live in the West Coast, like have better weather, go to a Texas. Like there's always that thing too. But I think as far as fit wise, like you look at the point guard position, you look at the Wolves, and outside of Anthony Edwards, like, do they really have another just microwave scorer that, like, no, like Jaden's not a microwave scorer. Randall was very good the second half of the regular season and the first two playoff series, being that other guy, but has Ant ever had like a Damian Lillard next to him? And, the Wolves are they lack the point guard position right now. Conley's old. Dillingham's, no one knows quite how good he's going to be yet. So there's kind of that opening. And if they wanted to give it to Dame and say, hey, you probably won't be back till April, but like, if you want to come here, ramp up your process through the year, be able to be available for the playoffs. Like, you can't really say no to that. I mean, Dame's been in the playoffs. He's one of the best point guards in the NBA. Obviously, he's getting older now, but he's had these injuries. But it's Damian Lillard. He's been in the playoffs. He's won playoff series. He's been a clutch player before. Could Minnesota add that to the thing? I mean, you never say never. I do agree with Spears and ESPN. I think Minnesota's probably one of the better fits for him. You always talk about all these big market teams, but does he actually fit there? And I think, Minnesota's a good fit for Dame for sure.
I would do some very sinful things to have Damian Lillard on this roster. I'll start with that first of all, because Damian Lillard, we can have like a giant debate over the CBA, but like the conversation that we're having right now with Dame and soon Beal and even Brogdon to an extent, the fact that players like this are getting cut and stretched their contracts and available for potentially $7 million to get under the second apron, like these are situations Minnesota has to jump all over, get rejected as many times as you have to, because we're just in a really weird time in NBA history where you can get a Hall of Famer for $7 million. And I get it. He wouldn't be available if it wasn't for an Achilles, but I don't think 5 years ago, this would even be a super possible scenario, but everybody's so darn afraid of the second apron. And I mean, Dame would be a veteran to Rob Dillingham. Damian Lillard would be the number 2 pretty reliably if he comes back healthy. And maybe it might have to be like a 2-year thing just so he has some ramp up and it's a 2-year window. But I just think Damian Lillard, that's a player like that is the solution if you're trying to outtake OKC, because suddenly their, influx of perimeter defenders becomes less of a harm as it was last year for Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, the new CBA is it's very hard to understand the new CBA. There's a lot going on with it, and it's a hard topic to understand. And you see all these teams making all these moves and being on the second apron. And that's kind of where you got to give Tim Conley like a big shout out too, is like, I don't think people understand like how good he's done and how getting rid of that $53 million cat contract has really helped Minnesota, because in the extensions that he's done. And look, Naz Reid making $25 million a year is in 2 years is going to be like even better than it is now. And it already was a great contract. You could talk about not wanting to bring Randall back, but getting Randall back on 30, whatever he just signed for, $33 million a year. Gobert taking a pay cut to 35. Not only do you combine, like Naz Reid and Chris Brenner are combined for Cat's salary, you give yourself more room and flexibility with Anthony Edwards, which was the goal of trading Cat. You do that. And now you have guys that if you do need to make a move, if you do need to make a splash, these are way easier tradable contracts than a $55 million player. And that's why I think Tim Klein's done a great job, is because he's done that. But we also have, with these good contracts, all these young guys that are ready to play too. So it gives Minnesota so much flexibility with if they need to make a mid-trade during the year, they have all these young guys that can play. They have flexibility in the future for cap space with Anthony Edwards, and that's what you want because now they're under the second apron. So now they can package players for somebody if they need to, which was a problem in the second apron. You can't just like fill guys on and take back. So it gives them so much more room in the trade market. being able to, stack young guys. And that's another reason too with Beringer and Rocco is that's why they drafted these two guys. And they didn't draft another pick, and they traded down because they wanted to stay on their second neighbor and give Rocco a second two-way contract. And they still have this, I think it's $5.5 million exception right before the apron that they can use right now. So we'll see how that works out and plays out. But look, if Dame's available for the minimum, like, sure, I'm not gonna dude, you gotta offer him, like, hey, you come to Minnesota, sure. You can't not offer him that.
Yeah.
But I again, going back to just the point guard position, that's the biggest thing right now in Minnesota is the point guard position, and maybe a backup center too. But like Mike Conley, he doesn't have it anymore. It's the sad truth. It's a hard truth. Love the guy, but you can't just have Rob Dillingham. You need to have a Brogdon at least at the bare minimum, or like a bridge starting QB. And there's not that many left. And I think if the Wolves, I know they've let the market play out because they've kind of had to, because they only really have a couple $1 million to give out. So they haven't really been able to jump on anybody. But, it's kind of getting to the point where, like, if you're going to go out and get somebody, like, you got to go get Brogdon. You got to maybe talk to Dame. I know I think they said he was open to signing with someone soon if the process, like the revamp process, was going to be okay with them, or else he can wait till later in the year. So yeah, I'm a big Brogdon fan too. I think he's a good player for the Wolves, and he's a good fit for the Wolves. He kind of had an off year in Washington this year, but I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, we'll see, man. It's in Beal too. It's curious to see, like, I know the LA has been a talk with Beal, and we'll see what happens with him. But I mean, any fan would be excited to have Damian Lillard on their team, despite everything that's going on.
Going back to the CBA point you made, I really like that point, just the flexibility. We talked about that on our last episode with Kyle Tighe, but just the flexibility, even if, let's just say, Dame is like, I want 14 mil or something, and you want him bad enough, they can make room now. They couldn't with Cat, really. You probably say bye to Nikhil. You probably say bye to Nas. And just to not be in that second apron again and take another shot at it, right? Because if you're in the second apron for 3 of a 5-year stretch, all of your picks sink to the first round, which nobody wants. We already have few enough first round picks. Let's tap into just the last part of the show. What's your brief opinion on the Bradley Beal front? Because there's a report that the Clippers, the Bucks, the Timberwolves, etc., are all looking at him.
Yeah, I think a majority of the contenders will look at Beal. Obviously, I think Phoenix made a huge mistake back in the day training for Beal.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
And it was horrible. And look, Beal's not what he was. But he still was a pretty efficient scorer. I think he averaged like 18 on 50% this year. He was still pretty efficient. Look, like, I'm not going to say no if Bradley Beal said, hey, I want to go play in Minnesota. Like, I'm not going to say no to a Bradley Beal, like Anthony Edwards backcourt. Maybe let Ant play some of the one and just bring Rob off the bench still, or have Beal be a 6-man like he was at times. And I'm not going to say no to that or decline it. But I think, and I saw Jake tweeted that the Timberwolves have interest. So we'll see how true that is in the coming once everything's finalized with Beal. But, I do think if the Wolves want to add another, scorer off the bench and facilitator and someone who can make plays and have been there, have the experience in Bradley Beal, then I'm not opposed to it. But do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't see Beal choosing us over like a Clippers or being in LA. And at this point in his career, I think he wants to be in a place where he wants to be, I guess, at his point in his career. So again, I haven't seen too much on it besides that one report. So I don't know, but we'll see there. Yeah.
I think there's real reason to say that because Kevin Durant didn't want to come here. And that was a little bit of a surprise with how we were like, okay, he would want to play with Anthony Edwards, just speculatively. I'm not sure what Beal's values are there. Maybe in the twilight of your career, you want just to have either no state income tax or just wake up to the sun. I'm not sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, Beal can play make too, right? Like he's not
Yeah.
Chris Paul, but I
Mhm.
think he provides some on-ball versatility as a passer. We saw with even with the Suns a little bit last year, and definitely when he had that crazy
Yeah.
usage with the Wizards, he can pass the ball. So
Yep.
I I think if he's there and he wants to come here, how can you say no to that? Just
Mhm.
I think it's a great fit in that way.
Yeah, and especially trying to contend with OKC in the West. I mean, if a guy like Lillard or if a guy like Beal wanted to come here on the minimum, like, I don't think you say no if you're Tim Connelly, especially if they get bought out. Like these guys are getting bought out and released. Like if you can pay them a couple $1,000,000, like it's a couple $1,000,000. Like it's not $50 million like the Suns did
Yeah,
for Beal. It's $4 million. Like
or
so.
7 to stay under the
And
second.
yeah, and I think Bradley Beal, like you mentioned, he had kind of a playmaking role off the bench with Phoenix, where he did start making plays, but he still could, shoot the ball and create for himself. Um, so I think it's another option to look at. I think this week in the next few weeks we'll see kind of if Minnesota does make a little splash, but I do think they need to address that PG position and really get someone else because I think Conley's kind of coming to an end here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those. Mike Conley's had such a great career, and I think having him be such a critical part of the culture even next year is huge. Just with what he's done helping Ant, I would argue he's been the most valuable veteran for Ant of his career. Like Pat Bev was great, Rubio was great for different reasons, but
Mhm.
Conley's ethos and his winning experience and just his demeanor is so fantastic. Especially we know Ant needs to work on lowering his technicals, and Mike Conley's never gotten a technical. So small things like that. But to close it out quickly, let's talk the Brogdon thing real quick. Just rate it 1 to 10. How badly would you like Brogdon on this team? Because he feels like a pretty realistic option, maybe.
Yeah, I think he's a really realistic option. The interest is there. I'm pretty sure we've talked to his camp about the fit here. Um, I think like when you look at the scenario and what we just all talked about, like I think the most realistic option is probably him and I think it's probably like an eight out of 10 like situation. I think he could come to Minnesota and play and have a role here. So I think it's a pretty realistic option, and we'll see kind of if that something happens in this week or something with it. I know some other teams are interested in him as well, so it could be kind of a best fit type of thing for Brogdon at this point in his career. But again, you look at the point guard position, call Brogdon up, say, hey, you can play 20 plus minutes a night, and there it is. Like, so we'll see, but I think it's realistic. I think it's a good option. I think it could happen. So
Peak Malcolm Brogdon in Indiana was so nasty. It's
yeah,
so bad he never could
yeah,
stay consistently healthy.
yeah. No, I think Brogdon's a good player. He's he was really good early in Milwaukee. He was really good in Indiana, and then after that, obviously had some issues, injuries, and obviously got traded to the Wizards. And it's been a rough couple of years, but I still think he's a guy who can come in, knock down shots, make smart plays, and be just a smart point guard option for the Timberwolves.
I think it could be an ideal situation. Just go to Minnesota for 1 year for 7 million, stay slightly under the second apron, right? And then he gets that opportunity. He's literally just a couple of years removed of being a 6 man of the year. So that ability is still there. And I think, I mean, first of all, peak Malcolm Brogdon was on this team. Minnesota is not that far off of OKC at all. But I still think there can be those little flashes of a
Mhm.
guy who can score 25 and 7 with low turnovers,
Yeah.
high efficiency. That guy's still there to an extent. But Evan, to close out the show, I'm just curious, are you going to be at Summer League?
The plan was I was gonna be there, I think, but now it's looking like I'm not gonna be able to be at Summer League this week.
Oh man, I wanted to
I
come and
know.
say hi, bro.
I
Yeah,
know,
how
I
is
know. I was disappointed because I know quite a few people that are going in the Wolf space, and I was planning on going and seeing everybody and being able to watch the Wolves and do some content and see some people. But I think it's not looking like I'm going to be there now. Just do some other stuff going on. So it sucks. I really wanted to make it out this year, but I will be watching we'll be active. We'll be watching, giving the thoughts. So
You do great stuff, Evan. I'm so happy for you. Just continuing to pursue your dream in the basketball world and the growth that you've had. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but I'm dead
yeah,
serious when I say this. Your account when I was 14 years old, it's kind of why I started my Timberwolves account way back in the day. So in a lot of ways, man, you've had an influence why this podcast is happening right now. So I appreciate you, my guy.
yeah, I appreciate that, man. It means a lot to me. I mean, I've been doing Instagram since 2016. I started my first account called Wolves Report, and luckily somehow got to 30,000 Timberwolves followers on that before. Ooh, big voice crack there. Before it got taken down, because Instagram was dumb and never gave me a reason. Lost the account, and due to some guideline thing or whatever, never got it back. So kind of had to restart my thing in 2020 with T-Wolves Insider, and luckily enough, I'm at 21,000 again. So honestly, yeah, very, very blessed. And honestly, just to have a platform like in the basketball space, just because I love the game so much. Grew up playing my whole life. I coach now. Basketball means a lot to me, and I love like seeing people that start up their own basketball things too, like you. And I know we've got T-Wolves Country. I know I was a big reason he started. He's told me, so it's cool to like be like, I don't want to say it inspiration because I'm not like an influencer or anything crazy, but it's crazy to like have people DM me like, hey, like I appreciate your stuff. Like, you helped me out starting stuff, and just the messages are really nice. And that's kind of my favorite thing about just posting is the support and people. I like to be able to speak my mind and not, work for anybody. So it's very cool. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, been able to interact with some players back on my old account. I used to play video games with Josh Okogie all the time. So that was pretty cool. And I've had some cool experiences with some players, and used to DM Jimmy Butler when he was on the Wolves. And, there's a lot of different stories I've had like throughout running my media and pages. So it's cool to see like other people really get into it. And I think the Wolves have a good like community of people and who've been really supportive, and met a lot of cool people throughout my media page. And yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the support I get. So it's been fun. Obviously I'm older now and not in high school anymore. So it's, I work a full-time job and coach basketball. So, I haven't really been able to like create that content that I used to make in high school and college and have time for as much as I wish I did still. So I appreciate the people that kind of help me out and help me with graphics and collabs and all that. It's a big help for me right now.
Yeah, dude, you do good stuff, and like you mentioned, this community is incredible. This Timberwolves fan base is incredible. It's Hall of Fame mode fandom. Life's not easy in this community historically, right? We've continued showing up despite getting whacked with the baseball back and forth continuously, and just because we're sickos, we keep showing up, but a good community keeps coming from that. And yeah, I think you do great stuff, and you've made a great Instagram community. And that is going to do it for this episode of Wilder Wolves. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Wilder Wolves,